Welcome to the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Raids open question and answer panel with Corey Stockton, lead content designer, and Scott Mercer, lead encounter designer for World of Warcraft.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Having a good time? Awesome. So me and Scott are going to talk to you guys a little bit about what we've got planned for the Dungeons and Raids lineup for Cataclysm. So let's get right into it. So this time we wanted to take a little bit of time here at the beginning and give you guys a little bit of background about how we actually do this stuff. How do we make the dungeons? How do we make the raids? How do we script them? How do we get all that content to you guys? So we're going to break it down through a few different things and go through how that happens, first off. Then we'll get into some previews of all the new content. So everything starts, we've got a team of really talented creative designers on the WoW team, and basically we get together, we figure out where's this dungeon going to be, who's going to be there, what is the player going to do. An idea that's really cool enough that we want to actually go there, do a dungeon, and make it happen. There's a ton of places that we could do this stuff. You know, the lore is deep. There's tons of places we could go to place our dungeons and raids, but we really want to pick a place. If you've been to past Blizzcons, I think I've talked about this a few times before. We use a 2D layout tool, and we put the whole dungeon down on paper. Figure out which way our players going to go, where are the bosses going to be, what exactly is the flow going to be? How is the player going to work their way through this dungeon? Is it going to be non-linear, where they can maybe have a choice, go one way or the other? Or is it going to be a straight path, and we're going to guide them through and maybe give them a little bit more of a specific story experience? And all of this stuff comes through when we're in the 2D phase. So, because at this point, we can change ideas really quickly. It's just on a piece of paper. We can still change it around, decide what we want to do. We also pick where we want the points of interest in the dungeon. Where are they going to be? Where do we want to have like a really cool bridge, or maybe like a series? So here you can see an example of one of these layouts. This is Grim Batal Dungeon, which will actually be coming in Cataclysm. So you can see a quick view here, like all those bees on the map, those are actually where the bosses are going to be. You can even see in some cases like where we want the boss to path. You can see some arrows kind of directing where the player is going to go. And this is the basic form of this. We start with a layout like this, and then we decide, okay, who are these bosses going to be? Are they going to use the room? Are they going to use their environment as part of the fight? And when we decide something like that, it needs to happen here, because those are assets that we've got to generate and have ready to go for the fight. So here's another example. This is Icecrown Citadel coming in patch 3.3. You guys are going to get to take on Arthas. So granted, Icecrown is definitely a special situation, because this is a dungeon that I think everyone has a lot of passion for. It's a place we really want to get to. So here you can see a look at the layout. This one's a little bit, it's got bosses all over the place. It's got corridors and stuff. And this one actually has multiple floors. There's going to be 4 levels in the Icecrown dungeons, or the Icecrown raid, since you're going to be doing so much stuff. Scott's actually going to talk a little bit later. We've got a whole section where we're going to cover what you can actually expect to find in Icecrown raid. So here's another layout here. This one is actually of the Halls of Origination. This is one of the 2 Old Doom dungeons players are going to get a chance to go through in Cataclysm. You can see here this dungeon definitely has a more detailed layout. It's non-linear, so players come in at the beginning there. They can take a right, head outside to that desert-looking area. They could also go to the left. Killing both these bosses on either side then activates an elevator that takes them up to the 3rd floor. So all those in that 3rd floor there, you can see there's 4 chambers, there's 4 bosses. This is actually a huge dungeon. It's got 7 bosses total in it. So you know, some dungeons we just want to have a little bit more of an epic feel. This was Old Doom. We really felt like there was a lot of lore here. There was a lot of things we wanted to talk about. So this was a place where we could go ahead and add a couple extra bosses, and it's worth the work to do it here. So from this phase, we basically go into what we call a blockout. A blockout is a really basic form of the dungeon, but now it's in 3D. This basically means we can get in there in the game, we can play around in it, we can get a feel for the space, make sure there's enough room to fit that we want to spawn there and make sure they fit. This is a really important time for the dungeon because this is when the scale changes. The scale is super, super important. We don't want to end up with a dungeon that's so big that players end up having to run super far distances, but like say when they wipe and they come back and they've got to run a really long ways. That's something that we don't like any more than you guys do. You can kind of see an example of a new idea we went with Ulduar with the teleporters that would let you quickly get back to the fight you were trying to get to, but still have a large dungeon. That concept of teleporters, definitely something that we'll be carrying forward into Icecrown Citadel. You'll definitely see that idea again there. So once we get to this phase of the blockout, it basically goes off to an artist at that point, because we feel really good about it, we feel strong about the dungeon, we're ready to go. Let's get it to the artists and let them start working their magic on it. So here's a couple examples of a blockout. This is what we like to call designer art here. Gladly you guys don't ever have to play in any of these, but here you can just see it's just basically a quick look at what the insides of a dungeon like this would look like, just enough that we can get it in the game and make it playable. So this is a view of the old Doom dungeon that you saw a little earlier on the layout. So that's where you come in, you can choose to go left or right, and then there's an elevator shaft there in the middle. These are the kind of things we want to just get started early. Here's another view. This is a section actually in Icecrown Raid. And then I've got an in-game shot of just to show kind of the level of detail of how low level this stuff is. It's just kind of a quick view of what it looks like when we're working our way through. Now from here, basically we can kind of get into dungeon interaction. And this is where we talk about things like elevators, doors, and things that move around and kind of like give the players a chance to interact with the dungeon in a different way. So these would be things like, remember, like say the bridge from Serpent Shrine Cavern that led to Lady Baj. That would be an example of an interactive item. We have to think about those things early and get them to the artists so we can make sure that we have tech that supports what we want to do. Malagos, where the floor blows up underneath you and everyone lands on the drakes. That's something that we really have to think about and decide, do we want to spend the time on that? Is it worth it to do something like that? And I think in that case it really is, because it plays into the fight so well. At that moment the floor breaks, everyone falls, people that haven't done the fight freak out. And you know, that's something that we want, some of those moments. In some places they fit, and we just have to think about them early and make sure that they go in the right places. And these are things that we work really closely with the art team on. I mean, without having the support of the art team, there's no way we could finish all the things that we want to do for any of these dungeons. And then from here, it basically goes to art. They start off with these amazing concepts, and this is kind of where we get inspired of what we want to do. An example of an awesome one is actually from Utgard Keep, that in that first room there where there's all those flames blowing out of those giant furnaces. That came in as a concept piece. Originally we just had that as, we thought it was maybe going to be a room full of blacksmiths kind of deal, just slamming some hammers on anvils. We got that piece of concept art and we were like, oh, we've got to turn this into a whole gameplay scenario where you've got to drop these Rykul, and that's what'll actually drop the fire and allow you to work your way around the room. It's an example like that where this concept art really comes in and just helps us, you know, take the dungeon to the next level. So at that point, we're still working really close with the art team. We're trading back and forth between the block out and the next step of that final art. And from there, it kind of moves into that next phase where we can start getting some design in there of the actual creatures, the trash, and what players are going to interact with. We've got a couple concepts here. Some art. This is a piece for Icecrown Raid. This is a shot actually of Abyssal Maw. In the dungeon in Abyssal Maw, which you get to in our new zone, the Sunken City of Ashir. This is one of the first dungeons. We have an elevator inside of the dungeon, and the elevator actually fills with water and moves you up to the next level, and this is a shot of that. I think anyone who's done